Hello, everyone. It's John Lee, your local real estate agent here in the Philadelphia, greater Philadelphia area. I am here with a friend, another fellow real estate investor, Susan No. Susan, where are you right now?
Hi, I'm in Florida right now, in Fort Lauderdale area.
Okay. Yeah. So what are you doing over there?
Well, we're visiting Andres' parents. They came from Colombia to here. Andres, my husband. So
Okay.
we came down here to see them a little bit before we go back to Philly.
Okay. And Susan, tell our audience a little bit more about what you do and what you have been doing.
So we are residential investors, and we do, a lot of rehabs and just new constructions here and there. And we do basically the BRRRR method, but at the end, we're just doing short-term rental instead of long-term rental, or short to mid-term rental these days. And I've been, we've been very we've been looking into like different, we want to diversify our portfolio. So we've been looking into different, asset classes and different things. So we were kind of busy going around different conferences. We went to many like multifamily conferences,
Mhm.
syndication conferences. So it was nice to learn those. And I think we're looking into purchasing more commercially zoned ones. So like maybe hotels, motels, multifamilies, or maybe even like land development for like affordable housing and things like that.
Wow. Okay. So it looks like you're moving on up. Yeah, so for our listeners, to make things simple, what is the BRRRR strategy and how do you define it?
So Ver is basically, just buy, rehab. What was it? Rehab, buy, rent. But
Yes.
basically,
Yeah,
you
so
buy.
yeah, it's buy, oh my gosh. See, I used to just call it common sense, but it's buy, rehab, rent, then refi,
Yeah, it's
right?
4 R's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy, rent, rehab,
No, buy rehab. So you
buy
buy,
rehab. Yeah, buy rehab,
re,
re
refi, and
buy.
rent.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Even I
Yes.
didn't know. But yeah, for our listeners, it's just a process that real estate investors use. Either they use their own cash or they use private money from a lender or a hard money, we call it, right? And then you did also mention the word syndication. So for our listeners, what does syndication mean?
Well, so I've been looking into syndication and private equity funds. So syndication is more deal specific. So there's structure of GPs, which is general partners, and LPs, limited partners. I don't know a whole lot about it, but basically LPs are the people who have limited decision making. So they pull their money in, but they're not the ones who's actively working in the deal. So they're passive investors, and the GPs are the ones who are actively working on the deals, acquiring the deal, underwriting the deal, making sure the asset is being managed, and all these different things. So it's a great model, especially for like multifamily and things like that, because it's a bigger property with a lot more money. So many people who wants to get into real estate are able to, but with, without the time, right? Let's say if you have full-time job, but you want to invest in real estate, but you don't want to really get your hands dirty, for example, that you can become a passive investor and then get the preferred return and all these different things by great, multi-family syndicators and operators.
Mhm.
While private funds are a little different, where you are you're putting your money in, but not deal specific. It's more
Right.
like a portfolio game. So I've been just learning different things about them.
Okay. Yeah, so the syndication for our listeners, it's more or less pulling money from other investors, whether they're active or passive, right? And they're looking in to get into really big deals, right? Or bigger deals than what we are normally accustomed to seeing, right?
Yeah, more or less. But I've seen people doing syndication even for like 500,000 or $1 million deal.
Mhm.
But it goes up to multi-million dollar deals as well. So it's just a bunch of people pulling their money together, and then they become the equity owners.
So let me ask you a question. What's the harder part? Is it finding a subject property or is it the raising the funds? What would be harder in your opinion? And why?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question, but I don't think I don't think it's hard. Neither of them are hard. It's capital rate some that's why you have a team, right? Like when you're even doing residential real estate, you have to have your own team, right? Like title company, investor, agent and stuff like that. It's the same thing as these people. And I know, they were talking about 4 different roles, and you can find more on the books that, like Joe Fairless book and things like that. But I think that one, let's say, if somebody is good at talking to people, networking with people, that person is probably a capital raiser, right? Like they just know how to utilize their how to really showcase the deal better than the person who underwrites the deal, who's more familiar with financial stuff,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or maybe somebody who's been talking with brokers like every day, every week, just kind of like making sure they're getting the best deal possible, and they're actually putting the deals together to close with the bank. So everybody has different strengths. So I think it's important that you do whatever is easier for you, and then you delegate the other portion with someone you can partner up with.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy, Susan. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of really understand, at least for our audience, your history and how you got into real estate, right? Now, it seems to me every time I try to call you or get in touch with you, you are in a different country. So I think I think right now you're enjoying life right now. Um, I saw one video of you chasing a chicken. Um, and then I saw you like you're in so many different countries, and then the next day you said you're in Cancun for what, like a retreat. So I'm just like, wow. I know. Don't get me wrong. I know you're working. I know a lot of that is working. I know that the other part is also you're having fun, enjoying your marriage. So blessings to you. But I'm sure all of that was obviously hard work, right? So if you can explain to our listeners, right, the humble beginnings, right? From where you started to now. We'd love to hear your story.
Well, okay. Well, I'm still like, working on things and bettering stuff, right? Like I wouldn't say well, I guess, I work a little less because I understood the art of delegation and letting other people work, really. Creating the system. I'm not the system. I guess I understood that part. Is really allowed me to be more free. When you're free, you think better, because if you have all these work, all these daily operations getting into your head, it's just too much, right?
Right.
So you know Andre and I, when we met together, it's like almost like day one we started real estate investing. So we met in a real estate office, and then we he was just like, okay. So I had like 5 different part-time jobs at the time. I had to like really like support my family. And he was ready to start making money as well. So he said, look, let's do real estate investing. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And then if it makes money, let's do it. And we went ahead, started, doing wholesaling first. So we had somebody who was leading in it, and then we were trying to learn and then work at the same time for free, right? So we were getting deals, and we were, trying to negotiate the deals. At one point, we started doing on our own, and he Andre started getting property for subject to. So basically, you buy the property, the deed will be under your name, but the mortgages will be subject to. So in the beginning, we needed that because nobody would lend us money because we didn't have track record, no experience, no W-2 job. There's nothing to really for the bank to really insure their money on. So as soon as we had like 6 properties on mortgage, I mean the subject to properties, the lender started seeing us as experienced investors. So that's when we really kind of went on like a shopping spree on properties. So we started, building relationship. So we had a really amazing broker who had helped us build relationship with a bank, with a lender, hard money lender. So we closed deals like left and right. For there was a period of time that it was buyer's market. I mean the seller's market, and then we were just putting offers in for the properties that under market value. And it was on MLS, it was on Zillow, it was on Craigslist, anywhere. But as long as the money made sense and we knew how much it would cost right away, so we would do like a very simple math of like 65% LTV, and then, for the after repair value. and we would go in, get it, fix it, and then just refi it, and then short-term rental it. Like we were just doing this whole thing, continuously, short to
Right.
midterm rental.
Right.
So that's it.
Yo, I wish it was that easy. I mean, there's so many, dude. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I didn't mean to call you dude, but there's so many like terms that you threw out that people are like, what the hell is she talking about? So let's just go back for a
Oh
second.
shit.
All right, let's just go back, okay? Subject to, okay? Let's define what subject to is for our listeners and how you got into subject to and the simple terms of it.
So subject to is the best method when somebody is really motivated, right? Like, I mean, everybody, you should first place, if you're an investor, you should be working with motivated sellers from the first thing. But subject to is for the people who are about to lose properties for whatever reason, right? Like they've been paying very well until they face some type of issue in their life. Things happen, right? And what happened is they're not in a position of paying. It could be a couple $1,000s or it could be a couple $10,000 that they couldn't pay, and they're about to lose the property, ruin their credit, and they're never going to be able to, they would, but it will be harder for them to get properties on their name ever after that foreclosure. So what we do is once we locate the people who are having trouble, we approach them saying that, look, I'm going to buy your property, but I'm going to do subject to your mortgage. So mortgage is going to be still under your name until we do the refinance. And then the deed will be transferred. The house document will be transferred over to our name, right? But LLC, of course. So they would sign the deed. The deed gets transferred over. And then the mortgage is still under the previous owner's name. So we would just refinance them when we are ready.
Okay.
We just continue to make payments on the,
Right.
yeah.
And the reason why, in theory, this is very attractive for real estate investors is because, for our listeners, is because subject to, you can create the financing in most cases because they are not in a position, right, to make payments. So you can say, hey, I can pay you X amount of dollars for a certain period of time, right? And sometimes subject to, you don't even require any money down, right?
Right, right. Well, yes. So very little money down, more not down, but more like, we're helping them out because
Right.
if they had a couple $1,000s to move out of the place or look for another place, they would have tried to, like, do a deal with the bank or maybe borrow money or stuff like that. So what we would, one of the questions we ask them is that, how much money do you need to move out of the house, like for you to relocate? Because you can't keep the previous owner. A lot of people do that. Like I think it's a big mistake that you keep the owner into the property even after you transfer the deed. I've seen a lot of people doing that. So they need to move out. And what we do is we usually ask them, like, how much money do you need to move out? So we would help them. And usually it's just 3 months of the rent, that whatever they're going to, wherever they're going to stay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's awesome. The other, to switch gears again, I think another term you threw out there was LTV, right? Loan to value. So if you can explain to our listeners to LTV, and the example that you gave was when you refinance, you typically refinance anything, what was it, 70 to 65% of LTV? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of lender that you're working with,
Okay.
but that I've worked with, they did 100% on construction and 100% on purchase price, as long as it was under 65% of after repair value. So let's say if the property after you fix it, it's gonna be selling for $1 million. Let's just to do a really easy number, right? $1 million. So the bank is willing to give you $650,000 because 65% of 1 million is $650,000 as the part of the purchase price and fixing cost. So
Right.
let's say you went to the property, they're selling it for $300,000 because they're so motivated,
Right.
right? But you see that you only need like $100,000 to fix the entire house.
Right.
Then that means the lender is going to lend you $300,000 purchase price plus $100,000 to fix, right? So you would have like a draw plan and everything. Tell them, tell the bank, tell the lender like what kind of things you're going to be fixing in different stages, and then you're going to submit it, get it approved. So you close the deal. You might, so usually they ask you to bring some closing costs to the table,
Mhm.
It depends really, anywhere between 10, 20, 30,000, depending, because they're gonna, one of the first deals that they're going to try to hold on to interest reserve. So, this hard money lenders are interest only loans, very short term loans. So they're going to try to take that on the closing. So back to the LTV thing. So you're gonna only owe the $450,000, right? To this deal.
Mhm.
And then let's say, maybe you had to get an extension, or maybe more money had to be made, whatever, right? So let's say it was $500,000 that you had to spend on this property. Now it's time to refinance because you fixed everything. So what you're going to do is you're going to go out to do a cash out refinance. So this is the third of the BRRRR strategy.
Right.
You're gonna go, and then usually they're gonna do 75 to 80% depending on the bank and then whatever terms you're agreeing with. So in this case, it's $1 million after repair value with 75%. That means you can cash out $750,000 on this $1 million deal, minus you have to pay the other bank off $500,000.
Mhm.
Then it means you are making 250,000 tax free cash out refinance, which
Right.
you can roll into a different, next deals.
Yeah, and I do want to let our listeners know that this happens. It's very possible for you to find deals like this, but
Yeah.
statistically, Susan, like if you looked at 100 properties, right? Like from our experience, right? Out of 100 properties, how many of these deals do you find? Let's just say there's 100 subject properties.
Okay. How many what?
How many of these cash out refi deals do you typically find?
Oh, I mean, I don't look at the 100 deals. I don't know. Like, I only look at the under market value properties.
Yeah,
I close with that price. So
yeah.
every deal I get is cash out refi.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
So most of it's forced appreciation. So you're putting like a rundown property that needs work, and then you're obviously making it to value of the neighborhood.
Right. But one good, I guess, good and the bad thing is that the residential real estate is kind of defined by the properties that's around you. That's like the comparable values around the area. But if you buy like commercial property, like our recent deal was a mixed use with the commercial first floor, and then second and third floor with the residential units. And then that one was appraised as a commercial property. So it did an income approach.
Right.
So how that was a little crazy. So we made a little more money than residential real estate. So residential real estate, you can kind of foresee how much money you can make based on the comps around the area, while commercial real estate is something that you can really like you can kind of twitch the numbers in
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
on.
for sure, for sure. And we'll actually kind of dig into that. But for our listeners, just so that I can give a little bit of perspective, if I personally saw, let's just say 100 residential properties, I would think about maybe one or two of them has potential for a cash out refinance. I want to stress to everyone that it's easy. It sounds very easy to do a cash out refinance, but the actual process of it requires a lot of research and time. So I do want to let our listeners know that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to do your own research. Like, don't think that tomorrow you can find like a deal that's just going to cash out right.
Exactly. Exactly.
But also, like, I think it's important that if you're an investor, then you need to look for the deals that are under market value. And like you said, there is an appreciation method because you have to put your work into it, right?
Right.
So your first time doing this, don't bite off too, like, I've just talked to an investor who's going to start looking for properties that are under $100,000 below, and then they're going to fix it, and then they're going to do cash out refi. And I don't know how much money they're going to make, depending on the areas, but it's not something super easy, but at the same time, it's not something super hard. Like if you know what you're getting, if you know your numbers, then you know what you're doing,
Mhm.
right? But I guess the little change twitch is that in the middle is that when you are doing rehab, you have to be experienced, right? You know what you're getting, how much money you're going to be spending, materials, labors, and the time also is very important because you say you got the 9 months loan, and then now all of a sudden you need 12 months or 16 months. Like, are you ready for that interest payments?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like knowing the differences between residential and commercial is extremely important when you're doing these cash out refinances, because with residential, I think you like you said, you mentioned that it's very clear, or in most cases, it's pretty clear what your property is going to end up being. Commercial, it can be obviously adjusted not only by the comparable prices, but also by, the rents, by, the cap rate. So to kind of elaborate that for our listeners, how do you really determine the actual potential, how do you actually determine the actual value of a commercial property?
So I'm not a commercial expert,
Okay,
but usually commercial properties, there's not many comparable values, right? So
right,
what people do, the appraisers do, is they do an income approach. So meaning they need to know how much you're making money. So for example, like hotels or like retail centers and things like that, they would see like price per I mean the lease amounts, like how much were you able to lease the place for,
right.
right? So it comes down to your NOI. So it really depends. The commercial
NOI
property,
is net operating income, everyone, just to let everyone know.
basically, how much money are you getting from this property,
Yeah,
right? That's what it matters in commercial because it's a business. It's about business.
yeah,
Residential more about, yes, they could do income approach based on like, okay, you're making $1,500 a month for this little house. But it's more dictated by the properties around the area. The comparable values around the area that's similar to the property. But commercial property, it comes in all shapes and forms. So it's very difficult for them to appraise it with the, other sales around the area.
right,
So it's
right.
more towards the income.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm dealing with right now, even for me. Although my building is a 4 unit building, the way that it's looked at is almost, well, technically it would be a commercial loan, because I am actually refinancing it under my corporation. So they do look at it that way. So I'm learning in that way too. To kind of change paths here, your business is mostly through short-term rentals, right? So if you can explain to our listeners how you got into that and what your strategy is and where you plan on going. I know you did mention syndications. Now, has that changed to at all? Like, have you considered going into syndications more so than short-term rentals, or are you just going to keep buying for short-term rental purposes?
So first of all, syndication and private funds, they're just methods. So like if I need it, then I will do it. And well, not if I will need it later in the future when I have to acquire bigger properties. It's much better working with like-minded investors to either JV on it or syndicate a deal or even do a make a funds to really go look for deals, but it's not like the money is not deal specific. With the short term rental, how I started back in 2016 ish when there was a whole big ban of short term rental up in New York. So a lot of people from New York were coming down to Philadelphia, most like Center City and like South Philly to really set up their Airbnbs because we were very like favorable for limited lodging, they call it the city. And so one of them, I got to meet, and then we were, trying to make a company, together, but it didn't work out. So I just came out and did my own, and I started my rental arbitrage in the beginning. But I kind of realized I was making money for the landlords and the housekeepers, so I kind of quit that, and then I started investing my own. So I think one of the good things that I did is that I was underwriting the properties, like my residential investments. I was underwriting based on long term rental instead of like expecting, okay, I'm gonna make 3 times more this price, because times like this right now, a lot of people who bought luxury Airbnbs for the purpose of Airbnb income, they're kind of falling apart because they can't pay for the mortgages. They can't, they just can't get the money because people are traveling less than before. So, um, right now I'm glad that I didn't do that before. Like I have a property near the Jersey Shore, 2 blocks away from the beach, and I think that one's kind of a little in trouble because I kind of expected the income for the summer, right? And I think it was the first years, it wasn't really like we weren't selling like as much as it should. So I'm going to probably make it condos and just sell them separately or things like that. But always have your exit strategy, right? With the short-term rentals. Make sure that either if you don't think the short-term rental is gonna thrive, then reposition yourself into midterm rentals or long-term rentals or something that is going to still make you money and cover for the expenses that you have.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, one thing you mentioned was arbitrage, right? Airbnb arbitrage, short-term rental arbitrage, right? Can you explain to our listeners what that is and why you got out and what your thoughts are on it?
Okay, so, well, I think this is very area specific. For my arbitrage experience, so arbitrage, first of all, it just means subleasing. Like, so let's say, John, you have a property, right? I'm going to operate Airbnb on it, but I don't have property, so I'm going to rent out from you. Let's say you're renting it out for $1,300 a month in general. I come to you, I say, I'll pay you $1,500 a month, right? Well, you don't have to do this process, but usually people do that. I'll pay you $1,500 a month, which is $200 more each month. I'm gonna lease it from you, but you know that I'm gonna sublease it out to my guests. So I stage the property, make it look nice, and I'm just literally just subleasing to the Airbnb or other guests that's coming to the house. The issue with this is there's a lot of perspective, and I know a lot of people who do arbitrage right now, and maybe they're successful in it. I just don't really like the idea. One thing is the liability. Okay, the Airbnb has insurance, right? But I don't, I've had so many bad experiences with them. Like one time the guests like destroyed the entire place. Like damage was about like $30,000-$40,000 damages. Like they broke everything they could break with their hands and their feet, right? And,
Dang.
yeah.
$1,000.
And it was just like college kids that just kind of sneaked into the property with their, like, they rented with their parents' name, and then they just sneaked in, and then they just destroyed the entire place. And then we were doing like the whole claim process, but Airbnb just shut down our account and then just didn't pay for that. So it was like they kind of do that kind of stuff like here and there, like coming up with, oh yeah, we found the problem in your listing, and then they just like, that's it. So I really don't like working with Airbnb, so that's why I got other people who's better at doing it right now.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's liability issues, like insurance. Airbnb insurance is not as safe, secure as a lot of people think they are. And you have to, as a homeowner, right, you have to have a certain short-term rental insurance. It's not even vacation rental insurance. It has to have a short-term rental insurance, so that if somebody falls or whatever, right, you're covered for the purpose. Because if you have a long-term insurance and you're leasing to somebody who's subleasing to Airbnb people, and they figure that out, they're not going to cover you because you did not use the property as you agreed to the insurance company as regular rentals.
Mhm.
So that's another scary part. But I've been hearing a lot of different stories about different people like making money without owning the property. It sounds glorious, but I just always do your research. That's what I tell people.
Yeah, I mean, this is coming from someone that has done it yourself, and then all the obviously leading up to the point where you own your own properties, and then you're doing, short-term leases now. So this is a great perspective. Now, we're going to try to wrap it up here. I do want to ask you two last questions. So typically, I always ask all of our guests, what are you looking for, Susan? I know a common answer I typically would hear or would expect to hear is like I would like to get more clients, or I would like to have this space rented out. But if you could fill in a specific role, make a purchase or an acquisition, what is the one thing that you need help with?
So right now I feel like I'm really looking for different opportunities to learn and to partner with. We are ready to like really diversify our portfolio, and we've gone through creating the system, making our company almost on autopilot so that we are more location and time free. So we're really looking for opportunities to really partner with people with different experiences, right? Like I've been coming up with crazy ideas, like different ideas in my head. Is like running around where I'm taking a shower. I'm like, I need a like waterproof note to write this down while I'm taking a shower, right? So I really, I'm really looking forward to some people that, we can kind of collaborate ideas with.
Right.
And then especially in like commercial real estate portion of it, but also like residential real estate is super cool too. Like if you have a whole land, you can develop like something very special.
Mhm.
And also, I've just joined like a private funds group where they're helping you set up your own funds. So that networking has been great. I'm like open to ideas like, okay, so if you were to have a capital of whatever pool, like what would you do? What kind of deals would you do? Like what's your selling point, right?
Right.
So different, I'm really majorly looking for like networking and maybe talking to the right people with a like-minded, people, and then, just kind of like have this effect of like, oh, okay, I was thinking about that too, and this is my idea, and then we just make things happen at this
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And Susan, where can our listeners find you?
Good question. Oh Lord. I'm very active on Facebook. So Instagram, I'm on it too, but I'm private and I don't know too much about it. But currently, I only have Facebook and maybe LinkedIn, and I will be more active on social network.
You have to be active now if you're trying to network and you're trying to do what you're trying to do here.
That's true. I've
You know
seen
that,
people.
right?
I'm connecting on Facebook with people, and then I see their like profile is like an entrepreneur or something like that. I should change my profile like that.
Yeah, yeah. But Susan, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. Always, always, always encouraging to see you. And also I'm looking for your next your video. I don't know what it's gonna be. I don't know where you're gonna be, but I'm hoping you come back home to Philly soon.
I'll be back there soon. Thank you so
Uh,
much for interviewing me.
yeah, of course. Take care of yourself, okay?
Bye
All
bye.
right, bye.